This is Senator Adam Hollier, and this is the We Can Do Better podcast. I'm here with my friend, my sister, Miss Jey'nce Poindexter,
Hello.
who I've had the honor and the pleasure of getting to know over the past year and some change. And I'm grateful that you're joining us on the podcast. Do you want to introduce us? Tell us where you're from, what you're doing now, and why you're so awesome.
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. My name is Jey'nce Poindexter, and I am an activist, a consultant, just an overall voice for voices that are historically dismissed or undervalued. I definitely lend my voice and my presence to a number of things, but what I'm passionate about and focused on right now is improving the lives as far as respectful inclusion and a better quality of life for LGBTQ community members, not just in Michigan, but overall nationally, and for the survival and better quality of life of trans women of color, particularly Black trans women that happen to be preyed on and killed at a genocide rate in this country every day.
So when you say you are an advocate and a leader and you lend your voice, I think you're doing yourself an underservice, right? Like you aren't talking about the kind of role you play in your community on a personal level with your people. You know, when you go into the Ruth Ellis Center, I mean, I think that's something that people need to understand, the role that you play in building a family for people who have lost or had their family taken from them, or can you just talk a little bit about what that means and what being an advocate is in your community versus when people hear an advocate, it's not like it's just protest. It's like you are building a family for people.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is very true. In my community, I wear a lot of different hats. So I am the vice president of Trans Sisters of Color Project. And I'm also the co-chair of the Fair and Equal Michigan Initiative. And our main goal and what we're focused on right now is amending the Elliott-Larsen Act to cover sexual orientation and gender identity here in Michigan. And so those initiatives and those responsibilities really keep me going. But I also render supportive services to LGBTQ community members. So I come with a wealthy amount of experience, firsthand experience, not just something that I'm reading in textbooks or on trainings, literally on the ground. And in the sense of mobilizing my community, I help them understand the importance of being involved in the electoral process and keeping engaged, following up with victimization. What does it look like to do that? With all of the victimization that we see rolling out as far as discrimination and hate speech, which has been on the rise and maintained itself for the past 4 years, which parallels with this administration's tender. So my work is always cut out for me in the sense of responding, but also being able to then take that victimization and take those experiences and those stories into spaces and moments where my community members are historically, locked out or not a part of the conversation or invited to the table. And so it's an arduous task, but it's something that I love to do because I know. What you say?
I said, yes, you do love to do it.
Yes, I do, because I know that it's important. And look, I'm not just fighting for me. I'm fighting for generations that will come after that really can't get with the idea of being a taxpayer and helping support a state's economy that then doesn't support me as far as establishing respect in my housing and with my education. And lo and behold, healthcare. We have the healthcare conversation that revolves around trans identifying people. So it's so many different areas. But I try to hit them all because they're all equally important. Housing, healthcare, resources, victimization, and all of it, plus more. But all of the things that I mentioned, they go together. And when we read the statistics, we know right now the statistics are off because the truth and the reality of people of color, particularly Black people, is not correctly translated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not correctly, collected. And so all of the numbers and the statistics that we hear about the victimization with the LGBTQ community, particularly with community members of color and Black community members, all of those numbers go up. So the homelessness rate of LGBTQ community members, when you see it, add about 15% more on there for communities of color and Black. Resources, I think the average LGBTQ community member here in Michigan, I think their income is like $10,000, maybe $9,000, you know what I'm saying? So I think about what does that look like to sustain and stabilize a home, or not even a home, just everyday life, eating, making sure you wash, making sure that you have clean clothing. So all of these things play through my mind day in and day out. And that encourages and also articulates the direction of my response.
So you got us down the road on some of the policy and some of the work you do, but let the people get to know you. I think, when we first sat down, it was, you are my first trans woman friend, right? Like, person who is not somebody I know, like I know other people, but like someone who would come over the house, could hang out with the kids, like a person who I would consider, close to. And I think people don't understand because they don't have a relationship.
That's right.
With someone who has a similar life experience. Can you just tell people a little bit about what it's like growing up as a trans sister of color, like in the city, right? Like what does that feel like? What do you go through? And because maybe there's somebody who's listening who is trying to grapple with who they are in ways that I never had to, but you did. And I know you play a huge role in helping bringing those people along. Every time we're out and about, people are calling you mother and talking about all these things. And people have a connection to you that other people outside of your community don't understand. And I like, how can you share? What
First of all, let me say thank you. That's super sweet. For you to acknowledge that. I really appreciate it. I do. And I definitely consider you a friend and family. I always, reach out through text and tell you I'm praying for you and your wife. And I know you're expecting another child.
Which we're very excited about. Yeah, AJ.
In a very short time. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. But also I appreciate you in the sense of making my experience real and giving it space and opportunity as times like this. It has not been easy. I make it look easy because of the grace of God, because He literally has favored me. And so my faith has kept me through hard times and trials. And talk about doors slamming in your face. Who really honors the work for trans people or the work for LGBTQ community members, when these are populations that are always undervalued and dismissed and just not even recognized with humanly regard at first. And so, you think about that, and I think about everything that I experienced coming up. I had a good upbringing. I had a wonderful mother who provided very well, but I had challenges just like the next person in trying to fully understand. I have a deep level of faith, so I went through that. You hear the religious persecution against the LGBTQ community, and that was a really big piece for me because everything about me is centered in my faith. I grew up in the church, and I love singing and praising God. I always went to church and Bible study, and it wasn't forced, it was chosen. And so it was hard for me to understand that the Lord that I loved, that I cherished, that people were preaching damnation and
Mhm.
harm and death to me. But the Lord tells me that his mercy is sufficient for us all.
Mhm.
And you know what I'm saying, that one sin isn't greater than the next. And so I grew up thinking that he had all power in his hand, but then I have people who tell me, yeah, he has all the power in his hand to deal with everything, to change everything, to do anything that he sees fit. But that doesn't apply to me. And so that was a hard thing for me to kind of realize. And I know that in that they're calling God a liar. And so I don't believe it because I know that he can never lie. He's perfect in all his ways. That's what the word says. And so I just keep going on and I kept on pushing and I kept on feeling this sense of resilience and pushback. And I've
Yeah.
always have been that way. I've always been very upfront, very blunt. And you know, just it is what it is. Either we're going to fuss, fight, or talk it out. You know what I'm saying? And that's just that. And so I went through life and I made some mistakes and I learned better. So now I do better. And I realized all of the things that I went through prepared me for such a time as this. Uh,
Mhm.
it gave me a servant's heart.
Mhm.
So now when I bump into people and I encounter people and people come to me, you know, fragile and you maybe a little bit, not broken, but maybe a little bit. And so I empathize and I respond according to that empathy because I know what it's like to go through. I
Yep.
know what it's like to be dismissed and to be profiled, just to be squandered, you know, just at the mention of who I am. And that always gives me a little trouble within our culture, within the Black culture, because a lot of the fights, a lot of the struggles echo the same sentiment that we're sending out to these systems and these entities that have blocked us out and that has undervalued us. And even when I think about hate crimes, you know, hate crimes, that's not just the LGBT or a gay thing. You know, Ahmaud Arbery, that was a hate crime.
Yep.
And we can very well have that here in Michigan. So it's very important that when you hear of initiatives like Fair and Equal Michigan initiative, that you try to support it and you try to do your research and you do diligence, because establishing support for that level of initiative that takes away hate crimes here, where it is we could very have a lot of these narratives. And I mean, look at the level of hate out here.
Yeah.
You got like people planning to kidnap our governor.
Well, let's go back to you. I mean, and so you talked about the grounding of your life and your faith. And one of the kind of first issues that we were working on is obviously I introduced hate crimes legislation to protect
I
LGBTQ.
know.
But we had a situation where, you know, you work at the Ruth Ellis Center. We had one of your sisters who was tragically and heinously murdered by someone who claims to be a minister, a person of God. And we don't talk about those kind of things. We don't talk about the life expectancy of Black women. We don't, like, her name is not a name that people are now like, hey, that's unacceptable. And admittedly, it wasn't because a police officer did it, but should we have more faith in church and people who carry the Lord's name than the police? And so can you just talk a little bit about how common that is and what it means to be a trans woman of color, what the Trans Sisters of Color Project is doing, how people can get engaged with the Ruth Ellis Center right there at Highland Park in the
Mhm.
second Senate district, you know, where you're at and where you have been a voice and a place that's been a real resource in this time where people have been shut in and domestic violence and you know, where all of these things are happening, that is a beacon of hope, a safe space. Like,
Right.
can you, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly what you said. That I mean, all of those things influence the work that I do. And I have been very fortunate to be able to occupy the Ruth Ellis space with my work through the Trans Sisters of Color Project. So like I said earlier, I'm the vice president. Liliana Angel Reyes, she's the executive director.
Mhm.
And Ruth Ellis is a fiduciary of Trans Sisters of Color Project. And so we collaborate and work a lot to make sure that we are always being innovative about programming, about rendering services, and even about how we respond. Because a lot of the bureaucracy and a lot of the unleveled playing fields, it even comes within the agency kind of process and that whole community entity or nonprofit work, if you will. And so it's always a task to really to not only respond, but to be innovative and think outside the box, particularly the Trans Sisters of Color Project. When the pandemic first rolled out, we were the first agency to start doing the essential care packages
Mhm.
and bags, where me and the other ladies, we went shopping. We would go to Sam's Club probably about maybe 4 or 5 times a week, and we would get essentials. And when I say essentials, I don't mean, just a thing of water and some hand sanitizer. I went full on grocery shopping and blankets and heated blankets and Dove soap and, everything that we knew that we liked, and that we knew this resources were already lacking pre-COVID.
Yep.
So you put the onslaught of a pandemic where people are losing employment, losing homes, losing emotional stability, and really kind of feeling lost in this bubble of trauma and hurdles. And so we as a group, we were talking, the leadership were talking to me and Liliana, and we're like, what can we do? What can we do that can step outside the box, where we can help people and not tell people when they come to us, oh, well, there's a check process. And so it's going to be about 2 to 3 weeks. And if somebody signs off on it, then we can then help you. And so we just were like, you know what, we're going to do what we know should be done. And that's how we deliver. And that's how we brainstorm. And that's how we operate. And I'm happy to be able to be in that position to respond to the community, particularly trans women of color in that way, because we are historically the most victimized. No one cares, even within the LGBTQ community members, you always hear disparaging comments towards the transgender population, and so we have to figure out ways to be a part of, but we have to be smart and we have to be very intentional about touching our population specifically.
Speaking of that, I know there was some, this year there was a lot about some of the kind of early work in the LGBTQ movement around Pride Day and Pride Month and all those kind of things, but a Black trans woman was the leader in that, right?
Yeah.
And so, when we did the rollout for Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Expansion.
Black and Latina. It was 2 of them.
Black and Latina.
Black and Latina. Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Thank you for, bringing that point up. But the reason I bring that up is because you and Liliana have a similar kind of relationship in leading this discussion here locally in the community. When the governor made this announcement, this is a white woman elevating the voice of a trans woman of color. And because Michigan still hasn't addressed Pride Day and done those kind of things, I was grateful to have, gotten the opportunity to read your words on the Senate floor and to talk about those kind of things. But can you tell us something good going on in the space? What should people be saying? That is progress. That is going on. And then how can they be a part?
Well, number one, like you just uplifted the fact that our state's leadership is really invested and interested in that level of diversity. Talk about intentionality. You know, like you said, we were in the special ceremonial room. I was overtaken with tears. I could not stop crying. Just standing there thinking about what it meant to another trans woman or another LGBTQ community member, particularly Black, that would see that on their news screen at 4, 5 o'clock, and then again ran at 10 and 11, that would fully understand that not only is this a collaboration partnership, but she's been very vocal about our friendship, and that makes me feel good.
Governor Whitmer.
That's right. Yes. But also the work with you, the work with the Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, all of these kind of pivotal moments within movement work that people probably take for granted, but it means something to me because in my whole lifetime, I never saw that.
Yep.
So for me to actually be doing it, it's a responsibility. But I always stop. I always stop and be grateful because I know that it's not the reality. It's not the story of most people like me. And so talk about the good things that are going on. Like I said, Fair and Equal Michigan. The other day, we were expected to turn in 340 some odd thousand of signatures in our efforts to get the Elliott-Larsen Act amended to cover the sexual orientation and gender identity. And a huge, warm, special, heartfelt thank you to all of my co-chairs and all of the volunteers in the team. We were able to deliver over 480,000 signatures.
Say that again. How many signatures?
We were able to deliver over 483,000 signatures.
That's a lot of people in Michigan who are saying that you matter,
That's
that
right.
you should be protected.
That's right.
And I'm grateful.
Yeah, a lot of people. And I mean, we've got businesses, we've got Dow, we've got Kellogg, we've got Rock Financial, what is it? The bank, Flagstar Bank gave us $10,000. Everyone, General Motors, the big three, they signed on months ago in support. And like Founders Brewing Company, we just have so many people.
We don't say consumers was played a big role in supporting that effort. So we'll make sure that.
Oh yeah, you are absolutely. Look, I don't have the whole list.
Okay? I know. I'm just teasing. I'm teasing. But as we kind of transition, can you tell me what you're doing for self-care? I think during this pandemic, people have been I don't know if they want to call it doomsday scrolling or whatever, but it's been easy to get caught in the terrible things that are happening. What are you doing personally for your peace of mind, for your mental health? How are you taking care of Jey'nce?
I am personally, I lean a lot on my faith. So if you see my table right now, I have both my laptops out and I have my YouTube up. I got my paperwork and I'm going through documents and stuff. And that's what I really rely on. I also rely on laughter and family and friends because my job is so arduous and so tedious. I like to really be able to just kind of cut loose and just laugh and really enjoy life when I come home and like have what's quote unquote called downtime. And so really these last couple of months have been really difficult. I've been experiencing some personal stuff, some you know what I'm saying? And it's been crazy, but I have been keeping myself happy and fulfilled by continuing to throw myself into my work. I've been working with the Joe Biden campaign a whole lot, advocating for the community. I just emceed an event the other day for the campaign, so making sure that they know the importance of continuing to connect on a grassroots effort so that we can get this done and not continue to rest on those historical efforts that were not productive that much. And just pouring into myself, just realizing who I am.
So
Yeah,
glad to hear you saying that,
yeah.
because I
Just
think as somebody like you who is a giver, it can be real easy to not put back into you. So thank you so much for
mhm.
coming on, spending some time with us. You know, we'll have you back. And for all of our listeners who haven't gotten a chance, last year we did a really cool interview with some of your sisters over at Ruth Ellis Center.
Mm.
So we'll make sure that we post the link and connect on that. But is there any one way that people can get involved in the work you're doing at Ruth Ellis Center? How do they give you a call if they need services? How do they get in touch with you? How do they get resources and support if they need it?
Please, by all means, like I said, I'm a co-chair of the Fair and Equal Michigan Initiative. We are still looking for donations and support, and that continued effort to push is a never-ending effort. So please log on online and follow that work. I'm also, like I said, the Vice President of Trans Sisters of Color Project. And so you can look at either one of those entities online or reach out to me. If you know how to get in contact with me on my Facebook, that's Jey'nce Mizrahi. Other than that, just kind of send word. I'm not too hard to get in contact with. I'm always around, and I'm ever so privileged to continue to serve my community as a whole.
Thank you so much, Jey'nce. And
Thank you. I love you. Thank you so much for the time. Seriously, send my love to the wife and the daughter, and I cannot wait until the new bundle of joy comes. So many blessings to you.
thank you so much. We can't wait for AJ either. But
I
you've been
know.
listening to the We Can Do Better podcast, where we will continue to talk to interesting and amazing people doing great work in the 2nd Senate District and across Michigan. So thanks, and see you next time.